Tonight, we have a special guest, a veteran soldier who lived through the horrors of the Korean War. He'll be sharing his personal experience of a place where the past never left, a haunted bunker that still echoes with the voices of the lost. Get ready to hear an account that goes beyond the battlefield as he recounts what truly happened in the dark corners of history.
I was just a young man when they sent us to that godforsaken bunker in Korea, a place where the past never left. The moment we stepped into it, I felt it, the cold, the weight of something that had been waiting. Something darker. Something that didn't want us to leave. What I went through there still haunts me to this day. But it wasn't the enemy we had to fear. It was something else, something that I can still hear, still feel, even years later. When we first arrived at the bunker, it was nothing more than a dilapidated structure. Remote. Forgotten. Abandoned by the enemy, we thought it would be a safe place to rest, to regroup. It wasn't much to look at, just a steel-reinforced shelter with rusting doors and rotting beams. But even then, as I stood there, I felt it. The moment that door creaked open, I knew something was wrong. The air hit me like a slap in the face, stale, suffocating. The walls seemed to press in on us, and as we stepped inside, the shadows seemed to stretch longer, like they had been waiting for us. Waiting to trap us. The smell hit us next, a mixture of mildew, old blood, and something worse. Something we couldn't quite place. I remember how the silence felt wrong. It wasn't just empty, it felt heavy, like the air was filled with unspoken words. The kind of silence you don't hear in the day. The silence that's been waiting for something, or someone, to break it. This wasn't just any bunker. This was ground zero. The heart of a campaign that had been raging for years. The Korean War, gritty, brutal, unforgiving. We were all so young. I remember the tension we carried with us like a second skin. We'd seen enough horror to last a lifetime, but nothing prepared us for what would happen inside that bunker. We had been fighting the same battles for months. The exhaustion, the fear, the constant struggle to stay alive. We didn't talk about what we saw anymore. We just carried on. But this bunker, this place wasn't like the others. It wasn't a shelter, it was something else. A prison, I think. A place where the line between the living and the dead was thinner than ever before. And I didn't realize it then, but we were already too deep inside, too far gone. I remember how we tried to shake it off, you know? Told ourselves it was just the stress, the nerves. But that didn't explain the sounds. It started small at first. Faint banging noises, like someone was hammering against the walls. Doors slamming shut on their own. Sometimes, the air would grow inexplicably colder, like a gust of wind, but there were no windows, no ventilation. At first, we thought it was just the wind, or maybe it was the strain of constant warfare. But that night, when we all went to sleep, the voices started. Soft murmurs, like whispers in a foreign tongue. And it wasn't just one voice, it was multiple voices, layered on top of each other. Calling out names. Calling for help. We tried to ignore it at first. But after a few days, we couldn't escape it. The whispers were getting louder, clearer. It was like the bunker itself was alive, breathing, waiting for something. And the worst part? No one would admit it, but we all felt it. We were being watched. Every time you turned a corner, every time you walked into a room, you could feel it. Something, someone, was always just behind you, waiting. We couldn't escape it. And eventually, neither could the men who were sent there. That's when we realized, we weren't alone. And no matter how much we wished it, there was no leaving that bunker. Not until we paid the price for stepping into a place where the dead never left. We didn't think much of it at first. The bunker seemed like just another stop along the way, another place to lay low and wait for the next orders to come down the line. It was just a shelter, nothing more. A quiet place where we could rest for a while. The war had already worn us thin, and our bodies were tired, our minds even more so. So, when we moved in, it felt like just another night in the war. But soon after we got settled, that's when the noise started. The first noise was simple enough, a loud bang, like something being struck. It echoed off the walls, and we all froze, looking around. We thought it was just the structure settling, or maybe the wind shaking the place. But then it happened again, louder this time, and more violent, as if something had been thrown against the wall. We all looked at each other, uneasy, but no one spoke. After all, we were soldiers. We were used to odd sounds in the field, to the strange noises of battle. But this felt different. It didn't sound like the wind. It wasn't a trick of the elements. It sounded like something, or someone, was inside the bunker with us. We checked the walls, the doors, everything. But there was nothing. No sign of anything, or anyone, that could have caused it. Still, the banging continued. It wasn't just random. It felt intentional, like someone was trying to get our attention. Or worse, trying to make us leave. At night, it grew louder, and the walls seemed to creak and groan in ways I'd never heard before. And that's when the heavy air settled in, like it was pressing down on us. At first, it was nothing more than a sound. Something in the air, faint, barely audible. But it wasn't the wind, or maybe it wasn't even the sound of the earth. It was something else. Whispers. You couldn't make them out at first, but once you heard them, they never left. They were soft, barely above a murmur, and they seemed to float through the walls. Some of the men tried to dismiss it as fatigue, or stress from the constant fighting, but I knew, deep down, there was something far more wrong than just exhaustion. Then it started to change. The whispers grew louder. They became more distinct, and we started to hear words, phrases we couldn't understand. It wasn't in English, or Korean, or anything we recognized. It sounded like a chant, rhythmic, almost melodic, but distorted, like something trying to break through from another world. The walls of that bunker seemed to hum with the sound, vibrating with every whisper. And the longer we stayed there, the clearer it became. These weren't just random sounds. These were voices. And they were speaking to us. The voices were coming from all directions. It wasn't just one place. No matter where you stood, they were there, around you, in the corners of your mind, calling out names, speaking in tongues we couldn't comprehend. At first, we tried to ignore it. Told ourselves it was just the stress of the war, the isolation. But the longer it went on, the heavier the atmosphere became. The air in the bunker felt thick, suffocating, as if something was trying to choke us from the inside. And that's when I realized something I couldn't deny any longer: we weren't alone. That's when it hit us, the fear. Not just the regular fear we'd felt in combat, but something deeper, something we couldn't understand. We all felt it, even the men who had been through hell and back. No one spoke of it, but we all knew. We were not alone. Something was here. And I can't explain it, but it wasn't just the bunker, it was the land, the place we were in. It felt wrong, like the ground beneath us had absorbed too much blood, too much death. And now, it was trying to hold us there. Some of the men tried to sleep with their ears covered, but it didn't matter. It was in the air, it was in the walls. Something was watching us. We couldn't shake the feeling that we were being tracked, observed. It was subtle at first, just a chill on the back of the neck, a flicker of motion in the corner of your eye. But soon, it wasn't subtle anymore. The walls themselves seemed to breathe, the whispers turned into voices that were louder, clearer, and far more urgent. We started to hear things, footsteps, too. Not just random echoes, but purposeful, like someone was walking the halls, pacing back and forth, waiting for something. Some of the men became convinced that the voices were coming from the walls themselves, that the bunker had become alive, that it was holding us captive. The whispers, the footsteps, they were everywhere. And there was nothing we could do about it. But it wasn't just the sounds. It was the way they started to affect us. You see, it wasn't enough that the whispers got louder, the shadows darker, and the air heavier. One of the men, one of the toughest, hardest guys I knew, began to break. He had been with us from the start of the war, a rock for the rest of us. But after a few days in that bunker, he started hearing things none of us could hear. At first, he kept it to himself, but then he started talking to no one, looking into corners, saying the voices were calling his name. They told him he had to join them. And he believed it. He became paranoid. Started accusing the rest of us of being part of the conspiracy, of hiding the truth from him. His thoughts started spiraling. He was convinced the voices were more than just voices, that they were the spirits of soldiers who had died there, trapped in the walls. And there was no talking him down. No reason with him. Every time one of us tried to speak to him, he'd shout louder, saying the bunker was cursed, haunted by those who had never left. And then, one night, he just disappeared. We didn't see it happen. 1 minute, he was there, raving about the spirits coming to take him. The next minute, he was gone. We searched for hours, called his name, checked every corner of that godforsaken bunker, but he was nowhere to be found. His gear was still there, untouched. But he was gone. Into the darkness, like he had just vanished. To this day, I can't help but think that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't taken by the enemy, but by something else in that bunker. After that, it wasn't just him. We all started feeling it. The knocking, at first, it was just distant, like a rhythmic pounding from the walls, but it grew louder. Persistent. Relentless. We couldn't find the source, no matter how many times we checked the bunker. It was as if the walls themselves were alive, and they were trying to get our attention. Then there were the footsteps. At night, we'd all lie awake in the dark, and we'd hear them. Soft at first, like someone walking on the opposite side of the wall. But then they became louder, faster, like someone was marching in place, just outside the door. And that's when it really started to sink in, something was here. We weren't just hearing things. We started seeing things, too. Shadows in the corner of our eyes. Moving. Twisting. They weren't just normal shadows. They didn't belong to us. The lights were dim, but I swear, I saw something, a figure, just out of sight, that flickered away the moment I tried to focus on it. I wasn't the only one. One by one, we all saw it. At night, it got worse. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, and my gear would be moved, my rifle would be slightly shifted, my boots positioned at the door as if someone had been standing there. But I was the only one awake. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me, touching my things while I slept, waiting for the right moment to make their move. We were starting to crack. It wasn't just the noises. It was the nightmares. The visions. Each night we slept in that cursed place, the dreams grew worse. Nightmarish images of soldiers we'd never seen, soldiers with faces twisted in pain, their bodies contorted in unnatural positions, reaching for us, pulling us into the ground. It felt real, too real. Some of the men started screaming in their sleep, others just sat up, eyes wide open, and stared into the dark, unable to sleep, unable to move. We tried to talk about it, but the words never came out right. It was as if the fear was too strong to put into words. The air grew colder, the whispers louder. It wasn't just in our heads anymore. It was happening. We could feel the presence in the walls, in the corners. And then, the clattering. The pots and pans in the kitchen, clanging together, as if someone was rummaging through them. But no one was there. Every night, it got worse. The shadows followed us. The footsteps never stopped. And we couldn't escape it. It was everywhere, in everything we did. The bunker had become a trap, and we were the prey. The tension reached a breaking point on our last night there. It wasn't just the banging on the walls anymore. The footsteps that seemed to move just out of reach. The whispers in the dark corners. Everything, the sounds, the shadows, it all came together in a way we couldn't ignore. That night, something changed. We weren't leaving without something. Something from the other side had marked us, and it was not going to let us go without paying the price. We felt it. Every single one of us. We weren't alone in that bunker anymore. By that point, the noises had become deafening. It wasn't just banging or creaking. It was the sound of something pounding at the walls, as if the very earth beneath us was trying to break free. The whispers? They stopped being whispers. No, this time, they were shouting, screaming at us, demanding something we couldn't understand. I remember the words weren't clear, but I could feel the anger in them. The walls started to close in on us, the air thick with something we couldn't touch but could almost taste. That night, none of us could sleep. We couldn't even close our eyes for a second without feeling that something was watching us. We didn't speak much, not because we didn't want to, but because there was nothing left to say. The screams from outside were louder now, the footsteps outside the door quickened. It was like everything was spiraling out of control, and we knew, deep down, that we weren't going to make it out without something following us. Narrator, voice trembling with reflection, still filled with dread when morning finally came, we couldn't get out fast enough. There was no hesitation. We didn't need to discuss it. We had all packed our things, ready to leave, even before the first light crept through the cracks in the walls. We couldn't get out of there fast enough. The moment the door opened, it felt like we were being dragged back into the world of the living, but the fear, it didn't stay behind in that place. It followed us. The voices, the screams, the shadows, they followed us all the way back to base. And they didn't stop. It was like they had been waiting for us to leave. Like the moment we stepped outside, the spirits that had been trapped inside that bunker finally got what they wanted. They didn't let go. As we walked away, the whispers followed. They didn't just fade away. They stuck with us, even as we walked miles back to base. The voices were still there, calling out to us, as if the men who died in that bunker had never truly left. They were still part of it. Still part of us. We thought it was over once we left that place. But I don't think any of us ever truly left it. I still hear the voices sometimes. Faint, distant, like they're still waiting for me to come back. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, when I think I'm alone, I hear them. Those men. Those soldiers, trapped in that bunker, still waiting. Waiting for someone to listen. Waiting for someone to finally hear their final cries. I don't know what it was, what really happened in that bunker. Maybe it was the stress of the war, or maybe it was something else. But I do know one thing. That place wasn't just haunted by the spirits of the dead. It was alive, in its own way. And the men who were lost there, they didn't just die in that bunker. Part of them, something that can't be explained, still lives on, waiting. I don't think I'll ever forget that night. And I don't think anyone who was there will either. It's been years since I left that place, but every time I close my eyes, I hear it, the echoes of soldiers long dead, still calling, still waiting for something to happen. Maybe they never left. Maybe they never will. It's strange. You'd think that after all these years, it would fade. The memories, the fear, the haunting sounds. But they never really go away. The echoes of that place follow you, even when you think you're safe. Every time I walk into a dark room, I feel the cold air again, the chill that ran down my spine. And the whispers. I hear them when I'm alone, when the world is quiet, just a low murmur, barely there, calling out. It's not just me. I've met others who went through that place. Men who, like me, were forced to leave, forced to carry what happened there with them. Some of them try to forget. Some of them, they refuse to talk about it. But we all carry it, the weight of that night, the weight of something we couldn't control. Something we couldn't see, but we knew it was there. And I think it's always going to be there. The bunker still stands to this day, hidden deep in the hills. It's a place forgotten by most, lost to history, but not by those who lived through it. And maybe, just maybe, it's waiting for the next group of soldiers to walk in. I hope they don't. I hope no one else has to feel what we felt. Some places should never be disturbed. Some voices should never be heard. It's strange. People think wars end when the fighting stops. But some battles, they never truly end. Some places carry the weight of the souls who've passed through them. They stay behind, and when you least expect it, they remind you that not everything dies. Not everything can be left behind. Some battles are fought long after the war is over. And some spirits are never set free.
Thank you for watching this video. War leaves a lot of scars, some you can see, and others that never leave. Some fade with time, and some are etched deep into the soul, haunting you when you least expect it. The bunker was one of those scars. The things we encountered there never truly left us, and some places, some stories, should stay buried. Not everything is meant to be uncovered. If you found this account haunting, if you believe there's more to war than just what's seen on the battlefield, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more true accounts from soldiers who've encountered the unexplainable. Some stories don't end when the fighting does, and some things are better left in the dark. Some things, they never go away.